To disassemble and assemble your Nokia Lumia 920, you will need 3 Torx screwdrivers, a T2, T4 and a T5. You'll also need a small bladed screwdriver, a plastic separation tool of some kind, a pair of tweezers and your SIM tray removal tool. You might need some adhesive if you're replacing the case. So remove the SIM tray, and hidden here is a little tray which lifts out and reveals the IMEI number. And there's also a moisture indicator just hiding in there. So push that fully back in again. Now we need to remove 2 Torx screws at the bottom using the larger T5 screwdriver. And now flexing the plastic case, if you just push it back, you'll find the screen comes away quite easy. Just push the corner away and you'll find the bottom lifts out, and gently lift it away from the casing. Be careful not to damage the ribbon cable. To replace the headphone socket, gently lift that away from the main board. If the replacement doesn't come with this metal frame, then using a small screwdriver, gently ease the socket away from the metal frame, and the secondary microphone, lift that away. If the replacement doesn't come with this metal plate, then you can lift this off. You can use some heat to soften the adhesive, and it won't matter if you damage the circuit if you're replacing it. Remove any protective film that might be on your new part, and make sure the headphone socket and the gold circuit line up with the metal plate. Once you're satisfied that's lined up, you can place that back into the metal frame and make sure the secondary microphone sits down nicely. To remove the battery, we need to undo this Torx screw at the bottom using your T4 screwdriver. This screw is one of 4, which are all self-tapping, so it's hard to get them mixed up. Remove this metal clip, and now we need to lift this copper heatsink from the top. So using a thin plastic blade, gently lift that away, being careful not to damage the battery ribbon. If you use some heat from a fan heater or hairdryer, it makes it much easier to lift off. Using a plastic tool, disconnect the battery, and now you can lift the battery out. To disconnect the USB port from the main board, we need to lift this metal clip. This can be quite tricky. Protect the cable from damage, and then using a small bladed screwdriver, twist and lift the clip up. That side's released, and it's tempting to lever from this side, but it might damage the connections there. So twist your blade and lift that clip up and then put that aside. Now disconnect the flex from the mainboard. If you're replacing the rear cover, you may have to exchange the wireless charging circuit and all the antennas over to your new screen. If you need to replace the USB port, then we need to remove these plastic clips on the side. It's held on with an adhesive and we can glue them back in later. Gently lift this plastic away and put that aside, and the keys will fall out at this stage. Now, using your screwdriver, lift the assembly away from the bottom of the phone and then remove that from the casing. This contains a few antennas. If you're replacing the micro USB port, it also comes with this main microphone. So gently lift that away. Just double-sided tape holding it on. And it doesn't matter if you damage it, as you're replacing it anyway. Now leave the micro USB port away from the casing. Now take your replacement flex and make sure the microphone lines up with the recess in the housing, and put one side in first and push that down so it snaps into place. Make sure you push the microphone down. If your new case doesn't come with this chrome surround, then just lift that out, just double-sided tape again, and if you can, reuse the double-sided tape to put that back into place. And then put this into your replacement case, making sure the tapered corners go towards the front of the phone. Give that a good push. You might need to transfer these speaker dust grills over to your new case. If you use a little bit of heat to soften the adhesive, you should be able to peel these away without damage. And then transfer that over to your new case, and don't forget the other side as well. Transfer that over. There's a small antenna in the top corner here. It comes away quite easy. Place that into your new case. You can use a bit of adhesive if you need to. You can swap these antennas over to your new case, just held in with double-sided tape. There's 3 antennas on this one. And we have a very long antenna here. Gently lift that away, and then transfer that over to your new case. To remove the wireless charging circuit and the NFC antenna, get the case nice and warm with a fan heater or a hairdryer, and using a plastic tool gently separate the adhesive, and with a bit of heat it does come away quite easy. Try to recover the double-sided adhesive if it comes away, and line that up with the marks on the circuit board. You can use fresh double-sided tape if you need to. Let's get the case nice and warm, and you'll find this antenna lifts away quite easily. As I've done this before, it's coming away without any heat. And you can transfer that over to your new case. The LED flash, again a bit of heat will make this come off quite easy, and try to keep the double-sided tape in one piece. If you need to replace the camera lens, then get it nice and warm, and you'll find this will lift off a lot easier. Again, just double-sided tape. And try and recover the tape if you can. If you have a replacement lens, you can remove this and fit your new one. So put the metal frame back on again, making sure the small tab goes towards the centre of the phone, and lift this little tab so it makes contact with the mainboard. Now replace your LED flash, putting the flat corners towards the centre of the phone. And line this NFC antenna with the markings on the case. And give it a gentle push down, make sure it's stuck in place. Now we can replace the wireless charging circuit. Make sure the hole lines up with the hole on the NFC antenna, just here, and that the markings on the case line up, and there's a small plastic pin just in the centre here. Once you're happy that's stuck down, you can put those keys back in again. The camera key is a slightly different colour from the power and the volume switch. And you can use some adhesive to glue this back in again. Here I've used double-sided tape. If the plastic retaining clip is not broken, like this one, you'll need to install the USB assembly first. So take your USB port and place it into the top right hand corner of the casing and slide it up into place. And using some adhesive, you can stick that little broken part back into place. If you need to remove or replace your volume, power and camera key flex assembly, Then start by unplugging from the main board, and using a little bit of heat from a hairdryer or a fan heater and a thin blade, you can lift the flex away from the screen assembly. This also contains the electronic compass if you're having trouble with that. If you need to replace the camera or the loudspeaker, or you're changing the screen, then start by taking your T2 screwdriver and undoing these two screws. There's only 3 of these screws used, so you can't get them mixed up with the others. Now we need to remove the torque screws on this side using the T4 screwdriver. For some reason this one had the one missing from the centre. Using a small screwdriver, gently lift this plastic spacer away from the bottom. Now we can disconnect the digitizer by lifting the flex cable up and pushing that aside. Gently lift and ease this connector away from the casing. It's held on with a foam gasket, so you'll need to peel that away as it's stuck down onto here. This is the connection for the main display. Lift that up and push that aside. And using a thin blade screwdriver, insert it here and twist to open up the casing, working your way down to the bottom. There's 2 clips here to release. There's another clip here which is broken, and another one here. Once you've released them, carefully lift the frame open. Be careful of the rubber gasket that goes around the secondary camera, and gently lift that away from the screen assembly. If you are not replacing the whole screen assembly and you want to change the glass touchscreen digitizer or the LCD display, you can follow the link at the top here or in the description to see how to do this. Now we can disconnect the 3G and GSM antenna flex cable, and if you need to, you can lift this away from the casing. Now disconnect the plug at the bottom. And put that aside. If you need to replace the loudspeaker, then lift the circuit board up, and you'll need to pry this out as it's stuck in with a foam gasket. When you place your new one in, it doesn't matter which way round the connections go, as it provides contacts on both sides of the board there. So I'll put that aside. To remove the camera, press it through, carefully open it up and disconnect from the main board. This is the rattle you can hear when the vibrating alert goes off. That's caused by the OIS in the camera. Now carefully remove the rubber gasket on the secondary camera. Now remove the copper heatsink. This is for your DDR RAM. Now we need to undo this torque screw using your T2 screwdriver. Now we can gently lift the main board up and remove the camera surround. The earpiece lifts out quite easy, and it'll only let you put it back in this way round. Take off your SIM tray cover, and there's a small piece of adhesive around this area. So using your thin tool, gently separate that from the chassis. And now we can lift that away. So this silver block here is the vibrating motor. This is your proximity sensor, secondary camera and microphone. So to reassemble, place your metal frame back onto the mainboard. Now we can replace the earpiece speaker. This will only go in the correct way, as it has a large and small tag each end. Now replace the SIM tray cover and make sure that slides up and down freely. Then replace the camera surround, making sure the clips on both sides slide into the main board, and that's located okay. And carefully bring the main board down, and before we replace that screw, make sure the SIM tray cover slides up and down freely. Now we can replace that small screw using your Torx T2 screwdriver. Just finger tight is fine, don't do it too tight. Come around to the other side and replace the rubber secondary camera and microphone gasket. Make sure it sits all the way down on the camera and covers the microphone. Now we can replace the camera. So carefully line that up, and this can be a little bit tricky. Just move it around and push down until you feel it snap down into place. Don't worry if the camera won't stay down at this stage. Coming down to the bottom, we can replace the loudspeaker. It doesn't matter which way round this goes, as long as the contacts face the circuit board. Close it up and turn it over. Now we can place that into the screen assembly. As you bring it in, make sure the screw holes line up and the camera sits down nicely. And make sure this rubber gasket is sitting nicely into the case and on the camera. And double check that the SIM tray cover is still sliding in and out freely. Now we can squeeze this down, making sure the clips locate. This one's broken. And make sure these two locate down as well. Now we can replace those two small screws. Again using the T2 screwdriver. Now replace those T4 screws down the side. And this screw was missing for some reason. Now we can reconnect those ribbon cables. Start by bringing the main display connector down. Once it's lined up, make sure it's clicked down into place. Bring this one over and make sure the double-sided tape is holding that down nicely. And finally bring the digitizer ribbon down and make sure that's pushed all the way home. Now we can replace the plastic spacer. Now we can replace the volume, power and camera key ribbon flex cable. This also contains the electronic compass, which is just here. Try to line up the hole in the flex cable with the hole in the screen assembly. This helps line the switches up correctly. So when you have this one lined up, come up towards the top and once you're happy they're lined up, give it a nice firm push down to make sure it's stuck down into place. If this isn't stuck down completely, it can catch on the rear cover when you're putting it back on. Now reconnect the flex cable. Now replace the copper heatsink on the DDRM. Don't push that down fully just yet. Now reconnect the antenna flex cable, making sure the two silver connections go towards the top and a single one at the bottom. Carefully line this up, and when you're happy that's lined up nicely, gentle push and you should feel it snap into place. Gradually bring the cable down into the casing. Take your time trying to plug this in and just keep moving it around and gently pushing down until it clicks down into place. Now we can replace the battery. Put the top in first and bring it down. Now replace that battery retaining clip. Have it round this way, and before you push it all the way in, make sure the screw hole lines up and then push that down into place. Take your last T4 screw and just finger tight, it's fine. Now we can reconnect the battery. Just gently line that up and push it down into place. Push your heatsink over and give that a nice firm push to make sure that's stuck down nicely. Now we can replace the headphone socket. Just line that up. And if you have trouble with this tape sticking down, you could use some new tape. So make sure the contacts at the top here line up. Now we can reconnect the USB port. Hold the case around this way and line that up and push gently down until you feel it snap into place. Now take the metal retaining clip and make sure those two metal prongs locate into those holes, and push that down so you feel it snap into place. Using your tweezers, you need to put that tape back across. Give the copper heatsink a final push down. Make sure it's stuck down nicely. And now we can replace the rear housing. So bring that over and off the top into the casing, making sure the headphone socket lines up and these corners go all the way into the case. Now gradually bring it down and watch out for the camera volume key flex cable, and if you end up with a gap in the case, then open it up a little bit and you'll find that they'll drop down into place. Check all the way around the edge and we can switch it on, and while that's booting up we can put the SIM tray back in and the final two T5 screws. Just finger tight. And there we have a fully working Lumia 920. So please subscribe and give it a thumbs up, and I'll do my best to make some more.